Hello there, welcome. Can everybody hear me okay? Can somebody on Insight Timer say hello? Let me know that you can hear me. Looks like everything is set up. Can you hear me now on Insight Timer? Please send up a heart or a thumbs up. Let me know if you can hear me. Okay. All right, folks. Well, welcome. My name is Mikhail Patrick Bovines. I'm the founder of Soul-utions, and I'm looking forward to today sharing with you a few things that will help you to really navigate what's going on so much in our world. And in so many ways, we are removing the wheat from the chaff. We're moving through a time when we're letting go of so much of the old paradigm, the old world. And in this release and letting go, it's about finding and understanding what is real and being authentic in a more and more artificial world. It's important for all of us to take some time and to consider and to ponder, what does being authentic mean? What are the qualities and characteristics that make up a person of authenticity? And how to evaluate ourselves in order to see where we can make improvements, where we can bolster and strengthen our sense of autonomy, our sense of presence, and also to have greater impact in the living of our lives. And being authentic is one of the keys to creating a life worth living. It's also one of the keys to empowerment. So today we're going to explore that a bit. Now, this course came along last week when I was in Walgreens actually shopping, and I was looking at the magazine rack, and I happened to notice the cover of Psychology Today, and they have an article on there which I have not read. I didn't even buy the magazine, but I noticed it kind of grabbed my attention, and it gave me the idea of doing a class. And the title of the article was Being Authentic in an Artificial World, and I thought, wow, that's a great title for a class. And so you won't find any of the material that I'm sharing here in that article, I'm sure, because I haven't read it. And my viewpoint on authenticity comes from a very spiritual, soul level understanding. And interestingly enough, psychology was originally the study of the soul. And then as time went on, it morphed into the dysfunction of the mind and the personality and the ego self and addictive responses. It became really now the study of dysfunction more so than the study of the soul. And there are some truly amazing, magnificent psychologists and therapists out there who understand its original roots, perhaps because they were teaching and doing this in previous lifetimes. But either way, what's important is to understand that today's approach is going to be an approach on a soul level to help you to understand the qualities and characteristics of authenticity. And as you can approach this with a non-judgmental mindset, because I know a lot of people think of authenticity and being an authentic person is a person who has depth. And that is one of an important understanding of what it means to be authentic. To have depth means to have substance, to talk about things that are real, that matter in life, to explore the unknown in a way that you come from a place of curiosity and seeking greater wisdom and understanding. An authentic person wants to, again, separate the wheat from the chaff, wants to look deeper into what's real. And personal depth is one of the most important characteristics, or one of the goals of a person who's living their life more authentically. Now, one quick thing I want to do here before we continue going on. Yes, you can hear. Terrific. Okay. I'm looking over here, but I got to look over this direction to see the comments. And I will pause periodically to see if there's any questions. But for now, let's dive into, what does this really mean? What does it mean, and how do you go about being more authentic? It is essential to know thyself on your spiritual path. And to know thyself is an important part of our ability to create a life worth living. It's essential to fulfilling and rewarding relationships and success in our lives is to be authentic. And the characteristics, the components that make up an authentic person are also the map to get there. Meaning, as I explore all of these different characteristics of what a person who's authentically living their lives with an open heart, vulnerably being who they are, having shed and released who they are not, who they have become, who's not necessarily in alignment with the truth of who they are. So authenticity is about being real. It's about being in alignment with what matters to you and what is your truth, the truth about you. And when we come into a physical lifetime, we are here to gain a sense of security and to get grounded into the physical world. And we are very powerless as an infant and as a child. And we often adopt other people's beliefs, their attitudes, their thoughts and feelings for that matter, until we can mature to a point where we can question it. And you see, when you've been given beliefs as a child that you've adopted because that's just what your parents told you, or what authority figures or your teachers or your siblings lived and experienced, and we adopt them as our own automatically, it serves a purpose of getting grounded here. To be physical, you need to have beliefs, and you're too young to choose your own. So often we will find ourselves in an environment that those beliefs that we are born into that are surrounding us are all often in contrast. They're the opposite of what we truly believe. And it takes the courage of knowing yourself and appreciating yourself to discover beyond the form or the popularity of the consensus what is truly real for you. So authenticity is a journey that never ends. That's one of the characteristics. Being authentic means that as I navigate through my daily routine and as I explore new ideas, new concepts, especially in this world that is becoming more artificial with artificial intelligence and all the different demands of the ego that aren't real. You see, the ego is very limited in its wisdom and knowledge and understanding. It only takes in information from the five physical senses. So therefore, to the ego, it appears that the world's flat. And many people followed that boat for many years, believed in that the world was flat. But it took someone with vision, somebody who questioned and explored and had the courage to go beyond the consensus reality by listening to their heart, by listening to their mind, by listening to their intuition, by listening to their soul and the wisdom from within that revealed new truths that the rest of the world could benefit from. So all of us have an ego and we need an ego. It's not about getting rid of it. It's about understanding that if we only listen to the ego part of us, we will become superficial. We will live on the surface and never experience the depth of our being. And we won't really know ourselves. We'll know the product of who we become based upon other people's perception of us, their beliefs that we adopted and we adapted to and we conformed to try to live. And whenever a person has spent most of their life in this superficial, ego-driven place that promises you one day everything's going to be fantastic in your life, and you've spent decades waiting for that to happen, and you still feel empty and meaningless and unfulfilled, and you've got all the toys now, you've got all the degrees, you've got all the education and all the money and everything that your ego promised you that this would make you happy and fulfilled, and you realize, I still don't feel alive, connected, worthwhile, because I haven't gone deep enough within myself. So personal depth is important, and it needs to be a desire that you have to develop personal depth. And it is the doorway through which you access being more authentic. Now, when you open this doorway of personal depth to seek it, not to just agree or disagree with those people around you, but to think and to feel, to evaluate, and then to discern, yes, I agree with this, or no, I don't. You see, you didn't have that facility as an infant. And as you became a child, it was too risky for you to oftentimes express your beliefs and ideas. And perhaps you didn't have enough knowledge and experience to fully formulate your opinion. And so, as you enter through the doorways of authenticity, it is essential to begin the journey. And what is crucial as one of the first ingredients and characteristics of being authentic is being your own authority. Being your own authority. People who have this sense of authenticity, they take responsibility and they take ownership of the choices and the decisions, the beliefs and the attitudes, the thoughts and the feelings that they have about life, about every experience that they go through. So the first characteristic is authority. And if you look at the root of the word authority, is the word author. And in the word author, it means to craft, to take charge, and to start writing the story of your life the way you want it to be. A person without not only depth, but lacks authenticity denies their power and goes along with the herd that follows the mainstream, doesn't question, afraid that they might rock the boat, that people may not like them if they disagree. But a person with not only depth, but authenticity is willing to stand in their authority, to think and to feel about what it means to you, about what's going on in your family, what's going on with your friends, what's going on in life. To be an authority is to be the author and to take charge. And that requires, I need to respond. You see, a person in authority, the first characteristic of authenticity, responds to life versus a person without authority, a person who's being superficial. They react to life, feeling powerless and at sufferance of their circumstances. But when you can take your power back from those beliefs that were given to you, and how do you do that? I often get this when people are wanting to know how to change limiting beliefs. Well, the first way to change a limiting belief is to begin to question it. Because that self doubt, is this really true about whatever belief you're challenging? Is this really true about the way to get to heaven? Says my religious leader. Is this really true about women that have been taught and conditioned by society that somehow they're less than and weaker than men? Is that really true? To question it is the way to begin to take your power back. Because the minute you interject self doubt by questioning it and standing in your authority, I don't know the answer yet, but I want to know the answer for myself. That's what it means to be the author. And then to start questioning beliefs that you were given, that are taught to you on the news. You know, we're in a world where there's so much bombardment of information, and a lot of it is a bunch of crap. And a person in authority who starts to think and feel and evaluate and come up with their own opinion is how to sift through the bombardment of so much information so that you can know what is true for you. So authority is the first characteristic of being authentic and being able to not only be authentic, but to create a life, your life, worth living. The second characteristic of a person with that functions authentically is they're conscious of their priorities in life. What matters to them? What really matters? And there is a law of priority. And that law of priority is that when your priorities are in alignment, your life moves really smoothly and elegantly and easily. And you will usually manifest what you desire when your priorities are in alignment. But when your priorities are out of alignment, you struggle and you have blockages, and you often end up feeling more powerless. So, the second characteristic of being authentic is being conscious in developing your priorities. What matters to you? What matters to you? The law of priorities, and what I've discovered, and I'm not saying that this is true for everyone, but I've discovered working with clients and working one-on-one with people, and in my life experience, that many people will put their survival security needs, meaning I've got to work and make money to put food on the table and get the stuff I need to be comfortable. They make that their top priority. And that's important. Don't get me wrong. Priority doesn't mean it's an either or, black and white. It's about understanding that often when they put that first, they put it in front of relationships. And that's out of alignment. There are basically the three major priorities: relationships that you have with yourself, with other people, with your environment, with everything, your relationships to life. And then there is money, finance, career, what you're going to do for a living. That's second. And then out of that comes the stuff, the things that you accumulate. And you see, a lot of people put their stuff and put their career and their money over their relationships. And that's out of alignment. Because truly, where does money come from? Your relationships with other people. And when you can put this back into alignment, that I've discovered, by making your relationships matter the most and looking at your other priorities in life. Yes, certainly health and well-being is a major priority in your life, and that needs to be there as well. But beyond that, our relationships are important. And then what we do for a living and money and our careers and our education, all that comes second to the relationships. And then third comes things, material things, cars and accumulations and houses and boats and toys that you play with. But a superficial person who doesn't know themselves, hear this, a superficial person who doesn't know themselves, they become what they have. I am my stuff. I am the degrees on the wall, because I don't feel a connection with my soul. And my connection is with only my ego. And my ego is only concerned with what I have and what I do, not who I am, but what I have and what I do. That defines who I am. So if my stuff becomes, you're hurting me by hurting my boat or my house or my car, because you don't see the boundaries and you don't have a clear sense of self that's based upon the truth of who you are as a spiritual being. And so authenticity, the second characteristic, is aligning your priorities, and to know that, yes, you need stuff, you need a house, you need things. That's not less valuable. But when you make it the top priority, you become superficial and you become shallow. Many people have broken friendships because their friend dented their car. And they could have been friends from, high school, and they borrowed the car and they dented it or they scratched it, and they've ended the friendship over that. That is a person that not only lacks authenticity, but that doesn't have their priorities in alignment. For truly, the relationship is what matters. Our relationships with life. And you all hear me as I speak and teach a lot on Insight Timer and other venues. I'm always talking about your relationship with your emotions, your relationship with your mind, with your beliefs, with your relationship is so important. How you respond to life with responsibility is what it means to be authentic. And if I do not function with responsibility and I abandon it, I often react to life in a position of powerlessness. So the second characteristic of a person who has authenticity is that they have and they are conscious of their priorities, and they make their decisions based upon those priorities. That's the second component. The third component is what one of my teachers has called generating energies. A person of authenticity generates emotion and feelings. They create what they want to feel in life rather than letting life force them to feel whatever comes along. Now, what does this mean exactly? To generate energy is to be conscious of that there are certain energies that attract and create a life worth living, that attract and create opportunities for growth, for greater success, for deeper happiness and meaning in your life. And in order to generate these energies, I have to establish emotional intelligence. And that is the third characteristic of a person who functions authentically is they have a relationship with their emotional body and they understand the power of emotion and they have dominion over that body of theirs. Now, what does that mean, Mikhail? It means that you do not judge any of your emotions by its label. Love is good, anger is bad. No. All emotion is a communication from your soul, from your higher self, from your inner wisdom to guide you through life. And there are only two types of emotions, and they're not good and bad or right and wrong. They are expansive, joy, love, peace, happiness, or they're constricting, tightening, fear, guilt, shame, pain. They tighten. They expand or they constrict. And when you can shift and start relating to your emotions as that, first of all, you let go of the judgment of right and wrong, good and bad. Depending on how I relate to it, emotions. And an authentic person is aware of their feelings. And not only aware, they don't try to control or repress or deny or justify. They own how they feel responsibly. And then they express it cleanly, clearly, without hurting innocent people. An authentic person feels their emotion. They seek to understand it, to get the message of why am I feeling this way? What guidance is my emotional body trying to share with me? And then they express it in a healthy way rather than harboring it and denying it. They express it, they release it, they talk to a friend, or they journal about it, or they do a session with their counselor or whatever. But they move through that emotion, especially if it's an intense one. And then they let it go, they release it. So, any emotion, regardless of its label, regardless of its title, anger or love, any emotion I'm willing to feel. I'm willing to understand why am I feeling this? What is its message? So I pay attention to it and I'm seeking to understand it, which is what love does. And then I feel it and I express it rather than ignore, deny, and repress it. I express it in a responsible way. Not, being angry at my boss at work and then going home and dumping it on my kids. That's not being responsible. And that's ironically how anger or hurt or disappointment gets a bad name, is because we've all been victims of ill expressed emotions from others. And instead of saying that person was irresponsible with their anger, we say, oh, anger's bad. No, it isn't. Repressed anger that turns into an avalanche at innocent people is destructive. But it was the person's relationship to their anger that was negative, not the anger itself. Does everyone follow with what I'm saying here? Those emotions that I'm feeling, being aware of my emotions, deal with those emotions in a healthy way, and then express and release be done. What's the difference between expressing an emotion and releasing it? A couple things. The main difference is you can express something and throw it out there to the world, But releasing means to then let it go, to forgive, to understand, to come to a conclusion that I'm done here and I'm letting it go. Where there are people who know that when I express my anger, people pay attention. I get people's attention. Hey, they start snapping up and doing what I want them to do. This is a nice little tool to manipulate people with. So I'm going to express it. Oh yeah, I'll express my anger, but I'm never going to let it go. I'm not going to release it. It's like a fishing rod. I'm going to cast it out here, and then I'm going to reel that anger back in so I can manipulate another person. I'm going to cast it out here. So there's people that express emotion, but don't release it and get back into center. That's the 4 steps: to pay attention, seeking to understand it, to express it, to release it, and then to be done with it. And any emotion requires that. And if you look at little children who aren't conditioned around their emotions, they feel it with intensity and they express it to anyone and everyone. And then they clear it out and they release it and let go of it. And they're back to whistling and coloring in their coloring book in 5 minutes. That is how we should deal with our emotions. Now, obviously, a child doesn't deal with it responsibly, but at least they feel it and express it without any inhibition about doing so. And then they let it go and get back to feeling happy again. So that's the 3rd characteristic of being authentic, is emotional intelligence. That then when you have emotional intelligence, you start to generate the emotion that you desire. Well, I'll wait and see if I'm going to have fun at this party on Friday night. That's a superficial, shallow person who doesn't take responsibility. Instead of saying, you know what, I'm going to have a great time at this party on Saturday night. I'm going to choose it, and I'm going to consciously create fun, and I'm going to celebrate and keep my heart open during this party. And guess what? That is going to create an environment where I can have a good time. But I, as an authority in my life that owns my power, doesn't wait and see what's going to happen. I consciously create what I want to have happen. And a person of authenticity, who's being real, who then owns their personal depth, can open the door. Characteristic of authenticity. Questions over here on Insight Timer. I'm not sure if I can see them on Facebook. I don't think I can see the Facebook question. So if you do have a question on Facebook that you're listening to, please IM me that question, especially at the end if I haven't answered it already. All right. Hi there, Blossom, Suze, Majessi. Good to see you on here. Yes, children are great examples of how to deal with our emotions. They're not always really responsible with it, and they don't look at the timing of it. Like, they do it immediately. Sometimes we can't always express our anger the minute we feel it. It's not appropriate. If I'm angry at my boss, I'm not going to just blurt out to him. I might want to take some time to process, release it, and then talk to that person about it. Children don't have a tendency to do that, but they do have a good way of being connected to their emotions without apology and expressing and releasing it completely. So no other questions, and I can't see the questions on the other platforms. So if you do have a question on Facebook or my YouTube channel, please reach out to me. So the 4th characteristic of being authentic, and again, these qualities are the steps in the map to becoming authentic. How can I start taking my power back? How can I start questioning my beliefs? Why do I believe this about Asian people? Why do I believe this about gays? Why do I believe this about women? Why do I believe these judgments that I was given? Are they based on truth or just what I was taught and conditioned to believe because of my upbringing? You can start doing that. You start to take your power back. And as you take your power back by questioning beliefs, you can change your beliefs. And that's what an authentic person does. Their beliefs are in alignment with who they are, not in alignment with how they were raised necessarily. It could be. Some of those beliefs are. It's not like every belief in childhood was a mistake, but to be conscious and to choose the ones that you want to continue and those that aren't in alignment to let go. and to release. And then priorities, to be conscious of priorities, to make your list of priorities, what really matters to you in life. And then the third one is to have emotional intelligence. These are all characteristics of not only an authentic person, but an empowered, authentic person, a spiritually awake person. Fourth characteristic is a person with authenticity that knows themselves, that is conscious of their beliefs and attitudes about life, and they have aligned their priorities in a way that is in harmony with life itself. And they are emotionally intelligent, and they listen and honor their emotions as much as they do their thoughts and their thinking. The fourth component is they are become a person who has character. They develop character by aligning and creating principles by the way they live their lives, by their choices and decisions on, again, their decision making process. Like priorities are so important to help you make decisions, while also having character to do the right thing in life because it is the right thing to do. That's what it means to have character. And character is based upon principles. And it's something that we each choose and select. The way we live our lives is based upon principles that are boundaries by which I will not cross. For instance, being honest is a principle. Being loving and kind and considerate and compassionate is a principle. The way I live my life, that matters to me. And I'm going to choose to function with my principles as much as I possibly can. And because they're principles, you're not going to do it 100% of the time, because principles are goals, ideals that it's impossible as human beings to do 100% of the time. Better person, you become more authentic. You can sleep better at nights. Are the foundation of self-esteem. And character is the frequency in which you apply the principles that you hold. So it's important to know what your principles are, to make a list of those principles. It could be to be creative. It could be to be open and more vulnerable when you communicate with others. That could be a principle, because that's what a real authentic person does. It can be to be trustworthy. I'm going to be trusting and trustworthy. People can trust and count on me. When they ask me to do something and I agree to do it, I'm going to show up and do it at every possible way and measure that I can. I want to be dependable and trustworthy. These are the building blocks of a person with character, that people can trust you and they know you're going to take responsibility. You're not going to be blaming and trying to find fault or finding a scapegoat to get out of something. They're going to know that what you say and what you do matters, and you stand behind it. That's what a person of character is. And that's the fourth component of a person who lives their life authentically, is that they have character and they apply their principles as boundaries in their decision-making process. A person of character. Now, there are a lot of people that can make a list of principles. This is what I tell everybody that I should do and how people should behave. And many of the old time ministers and religious leaders had lots of principles, but little character, because they weren't living their principles. And a person of character, as I mentioned, character is the frequency in which you apply the principles, meaning that you live your principles. So in order to have character, you must have principles. But there are a lot of people with principles who don't necessarily operate by them. They'll talk. And so a person of authenticity knows their principles. The fifth one is about curiosity. It's about letting go of the judgment, the automatic and blind, fearful, fear based judgments when you're dealing with the unknown or something that you're uncertain about. A person with authenticity is curious about life rather than critical. That's a huge difference. You see, a person who's superficial, who hasn't really had the benefit of thinking and feeling and evaluating and coming up with their own beliefs and have their own principles and character that they live their life by, and they therefore have very low self esteem, they're only concerned about getting approval and praise from everybody outside of them. They just want everybody else's approval and praise because they haven't functioned in a way that they can feel their own value. Being curious versus critical in other people, when people do things differently, being curious about the other party that you don't belong to, whether it's political, being curious, not to judge and condemn people because they're different, but being curious at differences within yourself. Let's wonder why I think this way. I wonder why I reacted that way at the party last weekend. I wonder why. To be curious versus critical is a person of authenticity, because what they do is they give themselves the benefit of the doubt. They give themselves the benefit of the doubt. I'm a good person. I'm a good person because I live a life based on principles and character that I have chosen, that weren't given to me from some religious rite or some, you know, impressive person out there that's telling you how to live your life. I developed them. They're mine. And because they're mine, I can own them and I can take authority and I can have my priorities in alignment and I can have an emotional dominion. And that creates a space of security where I can be curious rather than critical. And that's the fifth component of an authentic person, is that they have this curiosity and they're willing to explore that. The sixth component of a person who's authentic is they enjoy their own company. They're not afraid to be alone because they don't feel lonely. They like who they are, and they spend time when they disconnect on a regular basis from all of their interactions with life and all their daily routine, and they'll go spend time by themselves to ponder, to think, to recharge their batteries, to go sit in nature, to take time out to be with themselves, to journal and think about what's going on in their lives, to evaluate what's working and what's not working and what can I do to shift and change it. They take a sense of pride whenever they spend time in solitude. And that's a characteristic of authentic people. They like who they are. That's not arrogance because they value themselves. They know that God is all that is, doesn't make junk. And I'm a unique individual. And so are my friends, and so are my family, and so is everyone. It's not we're better than. No, when you own your value, you like yourself. That doesn't mean you're perfect, but you know that you are working on becoming all that you can be. And you live your life where the practice doesn't make perfect, practice makes progress. And I become my own friend. I get on my own side. That's what an authentic person does. And that's so important, is that they can allow solitude and spend time alone to think, to feel, to evaluate. They're not constantly on that hamster wheel, involved with all these people around them and losing themselves in their relationships with others because they abandon themselves. They don't value themselves enough. Authentic. It's about reaching and stretching and maturing in your consciousness, in your mind, to mature your beliefs from what you were given as a child to you as an adult, to think and to feel and to mature your priorities. And when a person, all these prior characteristics are part of what a mature person does. Because maturity relates, number seven relates to number one, which is authority. In order to be the author, I need to mature myself, to be in alignment with my life experience. So maturity begins, and we can become arrested or stuck in certain stages of ego development. And when we become arrested or stuck in these limited parts of our consciousness, being stuck as an emotional, mental, conscious level, as an infant mentality, an infant emotionality, an infant ego is concerned about, am I getting enough love, getting enough attention, getting enough money, getting enough this, getting enough. And that's that completely insecure infant trying to make sure they get their needs met. And even though we're supposed to grow and mature beyond it, some people don't. They get stuck there. And thus they become superficial and driven. They're not making their decisions for themselves. They're letting their need for survival to make those decisions for themselves. And they never feel that they are enough. I'm not getting enough love, enough attention, enough whatever it is. And they can be arrested in the infantile ego. That's an immature grown up who might be stuck there. The second stage of the maturity, when we move out of the infant and the child, compete and compare myself. I compare my behavior, my grades, my whatever with my siblings and others. And I start going into the next level of security that as a child you needed to go through. But as an adult, if you're still operating as a child emotionally in the ego basis, it's immature. And that is, am I good enough? I'm competing, I'm comparing, and all I'm concerned about is, am I good enough? And I got to perform, and I got to, make sure everybody is impressed by what I say and what I think and how I act and all these things. And I'm all to try to be good enough in the eyes of others because I don't see who I am. I'm not looking through my eyes at myself. I'm only concerned about impressing others. I've got to be good enough to be loved, to be accepted, to fit in, to belong. The second stage of the ego development called the child ego. And we all go through these stages. Like I said, some people get stuck for various reasons, but then we mature and we move on from the child, hopefully, and we start becoming adolescents and teenagers, and our hormones start to kick in and our bodies start growing and hair starts coming out and things start changing, and you're confused and you're dazed and you're like, what the heck? I'm panicked. The adolescent to the teenager is panicked. And then you're moving into high school and you got to figure out what you're going to do the rest of your life. You're panicked. And so the ego then shifts from, am I getting enough, to, am I good enough? Those are always still there. It doesn't stop, but they add to it. And what they add next is, am I doing enough? Am I learning enough? Am I achieving enough? Am I accomplishing enough? Am I doing enough? And you get on this hamster wheel. Am I doing enough? Am I doing enough? And then a lot of, quote, grown-ups are stuck as teenagers, adolescents, or children, constantly worried about, am I good enough? Rather than maturing into a place of knowing who they are. Now, when you have allowed this to go on, meaning you haven't done any inner child work, you haven't reviewed your past, you haven't changed your beliefs, you haven't shifted your priorities, you haven't started having emotional dominion in your life, and you don't have any character, or you have very little character, and you're not curious about yourself, you're critical, then you get arrested and stuck in the immaturity of self. And you end up becoming a grown-up. And you end up feeling, I guess I'm not enough. And the body grows up and you become a grown up. And I don't use the word adult for a reason, because an adult is a conscious choice to take responsibility, to be empowered, and to be authentic. And so you become a grown up and you often abandon your dreams. You just get through life. You come to the conclusion, the judgment that you draw upon yourself that I guess it's true, I'm not enough. And that's sad. You go into mediocrity at best or self-destruction of finding their authenticity and taking. So then, Mikhail, what is the answer to maturity of self? Well, you go back and you talk to and heal those parts of yourself. You connect with the child in you and you let them know you are enough. You are good enough for me. You allow yourself to connect with a panicked adolescent, their fears and their doubts and their worries, and you become a friend to your inner being. You become a friend and you let them know you're there for them. Because all the adolescent and the teenager wanted is to be understood. They gave up on being loved as a child. They go for just get who I am, understand me, because they don't know. They're confused. They don't know who they are. So they're trying to find themselves. If you can say, I know exactly who you are, and you're a beautiful being, you're a beautiful boy, a beautiful girl, you're a beautiful whoever, and you connect with them. And who better to understand that teenager adolescent than you, their future self? Who better to go back and heal the pain of the past than you, their future self? And when you do that, you take your power back, you find peace, you start to feel a sense of your value and worth. You start to love yourself. People often come to me or ask me after classes and things about, how do I learn to love myself? How do I love myself? The number one way is to do inner child work, to heal your inner child, because that's loving yourself and bringing those parts of yourself into harmony with who you are today. And so the ego is correct. It's not good enough to make your life work. That feeling of not being good enough, not getting enough, not doing enough, not achieving enough is true. The ego never is enough without the benefit of your spiritual nature, without the benefit of your soul and spirit. When you can start to expand your sense of self, and a person of authenticity, yes, they understand their ego, but they also know that they're more than that they have a soul and a spirit and a higher self, and they have a more eternal part of them that is wise, that is intuitive, and that is connected to source. That part is the part that knows it's enough. And the spiritually responsible adult steps into and functions from the truth of who they are, a spiritual being. And that allows them to know, I am enough. That's how the spiritually responsible adult, the authentic, empowered person, the authority in life functions. I'm enough. I'm secure enough. I'm creative enough. I am enjoying my life enough. I am connected and I belong with others enough. Not perfectly, not at the totality, but I'm moving in that direction, and it's enough. And because I have generated a feeling of enoughness, I can be at peace with myself. And I can spend time in solitude and get to know and shift and change my reality. I can be curious and I can have character and function, even when it's not convenient. I'm going to tell the truth. And I'm going to be truthful and honest because it's part of who I am. And I'm going to have emotional dominion, be curious about my emotions and dive into them rather than judgmental and judging my emotions as good and bad and right and wrong. No, they're either expansive or constricting. And those constricting emotions hold a lot of power that I need to move forward in my life. And I base my actions based on my principles, what really matters in life. And I function with maturity, knowing I'm enough and I have authorship and authority in my life. That, my friends, is the map to being authentic. and to move beyond the temptations of all the artificial games that the ego tells you. That to move beyond the artificialness, the superficiality of life, to find what's real. And what's real is love. What's real is beauty. What's real is courage, compassion, connection, spirituality. My relationships are what's real. And I need to value what's real. And as I do, I become more authentic and empowered to create a life worth living. All right, let's take a quick, this has gone by very fast. I can't believe it's almost 5 o'clock. Excuse me. How do you do it? How do you start implementing this? Well, you look at these 7 characteristics of a person who's authentic, and you look at, what is my level of authority? Do I own and do I take charge of my beliefs? Do I look at why and do I think this way? Am I curious rather than critical? And if I'm not, I can change and shift that. I can choose that. I can practice that. I can look at my priorities and what do I make my life priorities? Oh, I would have called you, but I had to work late and I had to do this and I had to, get to work and I didn't have time to follow up or to text you or to call you. My relationship don't matter more than my work. Maybe I need to shift there and spend a moment to text that person. It doesn't really affect the outcome of your work. But when it's a priority that's out of alignment, I'm going to struggle. And I want to make my relationships more of a priority. And perhaps looking at certain relationships, the number one relationship to make a priority is with yourself. You're the only relationship that you have that's permanent. All other ones are temporary. And many people with the immature ego, wanting everyone's approval and praise, with a lack of character, no principles, all they care about is getting other people's approval, to pat you on the back. That cheap hit of feeling good for a few moments that quickly dries up and evaporates, and you're back to getting more approval and more praise and more validation from outside of yourself because you refuse to do it for yourself. That's what the immature ego does. And so looking at that, looking at your priorities, looking at your emotions and how you deal with your emotions. Do you make time to check in with yourself emotionally? What am I feeling this morning? What am I feeling about this upcoming meeting? What am I feeling about the future? To start to explore those emotions and to process through the ones you don't want, to release, to let go, to be done with those, to forgive. To forgive. Forgiveness is such an important part of emotional dominion. And these are all ways that as you become conscious, you can strengthen and feed your soul and your spirit. And you can truly function in life as the empowered spiritual adult. And that empowered spiritual adult can then co-create to create a life worth living, to create and be at the right place at the right time, to meet and to attract the right people in your life that will align with your dreams and your visions of what you desire to experience on planet Earth. So those are some of the ways. And what I recommend as a technique is to make time to be with yourself. I do a date night with myself. Every Monday night is my Mikhail's magical evening where I work my magic and I journal. I don't watch TV. I don't talk to people. I don't go out and do things. After 7 o'clock, from 7 till 10 o'clock, sometimes 11, depending on what I'm doing, I take that time to deal with and understand and to explore my thoughts, my feelings, my beliefs. I send energy. I rest. I meditate. I take it easy. It's my night. Now, if there's a Elton John concert on Monday night that I go to, then I will be flexible with it. Because one of the characteristics that I didn't mention so far, this is a bonus characteristic, is a person of authenticity stands firmly footed, firmly grounded, firmly and flexibly. in their beliefs, attitudes, thoughts, feelings, their decisions. They're firm in that, yes, every Monday night I'm going to spend time exploring, taking time with myself. Last night was Monday, and I went down to Pacifica, watched the sun, just to kind of recharge my batteries because I know the power of nature. There's lots of ways of doing it, but to make time. Oh, Mikhail, I'll try to find the time. No, you won't. You'll never find it. You got to create time. You got to make time. Time is an illusion. You got to choose it and schedule it and then follow through. Listen, be a person who follows what they say they're going to do, a person of integrity and character. And so make a date night with yourself. It doesn't even have to be once a week, but at least once a month. Start there. And as you practice it, you're going to get to know yourself. You're going to get to question and explore your beliefs and recharge your batteries. You'll be surprised, if you're afraid of loneliness, just how wonderful it is to spend time getting to know who you are and to consciously craft the life you want to live. So that's the first technique. The second one is to get to know yourself. That's another technique. The third technique is to learn to meditate. To learn to meditate. Again, that's time with yourself, disconnecting from all the noise, the confusion of the outside world. To do what? To connect and become conscious of your inner world. From the outer world of sight, smell, touch, taste, and hearing to your inner world of imagination, creativity, intuition, emotion. What am I feeling? Meditation allows you to shift your attention from outside, the illusion, the artificial, the temporal, to the more real of who you are. So learning to meditate, and of course, I'm not going to have time to go into all the details of what that means. And there's lots of classes and courses out there on Insight Timer. Most of you here that are listening from Insight Timer know how to meditate or have resources to figure that out. I have lots of guided meditations that can help you on my website. But that's the third technique. And the fourth one that I offer is journaling. To journal, to write down, not necessarily a diary of what you have experienced, but more about a journal of curiosity, a journal to journal about your thoughts, your feelings. If you're feeling angry at someone, let me write about that. Let me express that, getting that from my consciousness onto paper. And if I'm angry at someone, maybe I can write an anger letter and express everything that I wish I could say to their face, but I can't. Ooh, that's being negative, Mikhail. No, it isn't. A negative emotion is an emotion I ignore and I deny and I repress. When I'm expressing and being conscious and saying, yeah, I feel anger at this situation, that is being positive. It's my relationship to my emotions. When I ignore that anger because I'm trying to get their approval and praise and I'm trying to be, Mr. Cool Guy, and I'm denying myself and this impact it's having on me by trying to pretend it doesn't matter, saying, oh yeah, I forgive you, and there's no substance to it because I'm still hurt or disappointed. Authenticity is an inner job. It's an inner work, conscious decision of who am I going to be in this life? Empowered or disempowered? Loving or fearful of love? Open or closed? Myself or a version of who I've become defined by others? We all make these choices of who am I going to be? And your free will choice and your decision ultimately is your power. So choose wisely. Choose to create time to get to know yourself. Choose to develop character, principles, priorities, maturity of self. Choose to be more curious rather than critical. Choose these components, and you will deepen, becoming a person of depth, beyond depth, of authenticity, of living a life where you enjoy your loving relationships and your connections, and where you can trust life to be there, and that life becomes a grand adventure. Even though it's unknown, the future, you feel a sense of confidence and inner strength to reach any challenge that life might provide you the opportunity to experience. So I'm going to end this class. I have my men's discussion group in an hour, so I need to get ready for that. So thank you for joining. I hope you got some value from today. I am me. Reach out to me if you have any questions. Thank you for your love. Thank you for your donations on Insight Timer. I appreciate that. And until next time, I will talk to you soon. And next time I'll be doing another class on Thursday. And that's about, I'm not even sure the title of that class yet. I'll have to double check it. But there's a class coming up on Thursday. So stay tuned. I think it's called Finding Your Frequency. Yeah, I think that's the name of the class. I come up with these ideas and then I don't really know what it is till I start teaching. All right. Thank you all. God bless you. Take care. Look forward to connecting soon.